Yeah, I watched episodes. What numbers is it that we are doing?
Let's hope that you watch the right ones.
Yeah,
18 and 19.
yeah. I watched 18 last night, and I maybe fell asleep like a couple minutes before the end,
Okay. All
but then
right.
I did wake up again and finish it. So I have watched all of 18,
Okay.
and then
So
I watched 19 this morning.
Okay.
sounds like you really enjoyed the episode.
Well, we'll get into it, but I don't want to spoil it.
Yeah.
Yeah, the me falling asleep is me being 31, not
Yeah.
me
Right.
commentary on the episode.
Yeah, I got
I
you.
play Phoenix Wright every night because I've been playing the collection,
Hmm.
and that's as exciting as video games get. And I fall asleep playing that every night.
Yeah, that's fair. God, it sucks being in your 30s.
I like it more than my 20s.
That's true. Yeah, it sucked more being in your 20s.
Yeah,
So maybe it's just an upward trend from here.
But they say
It's
the
like
first
when you're
10 things you do, so I'm looking forward to the 10th decade, maybe, to a
Yeah.
Queen Mother.
That's when you finally figure it out. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was talking to Tom about this the other day. I was reading an article about the Queen Mother, right?
You reeled off
And
incredibly inaccurate fact to me.
well, because in the article about
raise.
the Queen Mother, it was like she used to drink her weekly allowance for alcohol every single day or more, and she smoked like 30 to 40 cigarettes a day. And then someone in the comments was like, "This is so sad. She could have lived so much longer." And you're like, I wonder when she died. She was 102 when she died. You're like, how long was this guy expecting her to live? Like, she was just going to be there until the end of time. If only she hadn't smoked those cigarettes and drunk all that alcohol.
It's not. That's really funny. It's not like uh, drinking that much and smoking that much is an automatic debuff for everyone, is it? It's
Yeah,
like some
right.
people genetically just it has no effect on them,
Yeah. Well,
or at least no effect on their life expectancy.
it's kind of macabre, but with cigarettes, it's just, you're playing Russian roulette with every single one. There's one cigarette that gives you cancer, more or less. So it's not necessarily that it like is a slow. There are other health problems that come with smoking, but it's you're just rolling dice every time.
Well, that kind of reminds me of when you once told me that you have a set limited number of uh, D20 rolls you'll get in your life. You told me this once. It's like you're just wasting them every time you get them now or something. I forget the exact sentence.
Oh yeah. It's the standard superstition that like forms around any gambling addict. But fortunately, all my gambling addiction came through role playing games. But yeah, if you roll a 1 like now, then that means you've used up one of your ones later in life. So
Right.
if you roll your 20 now, like if you roll a 20 now, then that's a waste. You're not gonna get there's one that you're not gonna get. What's really weird about it though is that when you study Bayesian statistics, this is kind of true. Like it's not really true, but it is on average true, which is deeply uncomfortable to think about.
Sometimes when I'm in my sort of, sad and self-destructive phases, instead of, buying a bunch of beers from the supermarket and sitting around in my underwear just drinking them, I just like to sit on the floor and roll my D20 over and over and over again. It's just wasting away.
Yeah. Just using up all the numbers.
Yeah. They're different every time, except when they're not. Sometimes they're not.
Sometimes you get the same number, but that, it's a statistical anomaly, really.
Do you think if you guys played like gacha video games like Genshin Impact and things, it would ruin your life, or the appeal of getting like the new anime friend, like rolling in, getting them, is not enough for you?
I don't think it's enough for me. I mean, I played Overwatch for a bit. I'm ashamed to admit.
Does it have the
That was
same stuff?
well, it's got like loot box mechanics, That was about as close as I got to the gambling thing, but I never spent even a single tiny piece of currency on loot boxes. I just played the game. So
Nice.
I actually think I'm basically immune to gambling addiction. I think it's no one's ever going to get me, right? It just doesn't work on me. I'm famously resistant to addiction as a person.
Are you drinking coffee right now?
No, this is tea.
Oh, okay.
That would have been.
Yeah. Welcome to In the Skies of Love, a critical review podcast about the anime series Legend of the Galactic Heroes. I'm Kumail, a newcomer to this revered series and your companion on this adventure. Joining me are Tom and Joel, two diehard fans of the show. Each week we'll review and analyze an episode, exploring its characters, plot and themes, and asking new questions about this influential TV show. So please, join us on our journey through the skies of love.
That was beautiful. It's nice to be back.
It is good to be back. We're covering episodes 18 and 19 of the show today.
Yes.
I'll let someone else say the name of these episodes.
Okay, so I can do the first one. So episodes 18 and 19. So we'll talk about 18 first. The Lippstadt Conspiracy. Duke Otto von Braunschweig and Marquis Wilhelm von Littenheim team up to throw up. Sorry. Let me take that again. Team up to throw up. My brain I got some crossed wires there. Yeah, so professional.
The top.
All right. Episode 18, The Lippstadt Conspiracy. Duke Otto von Braunschweig and Marquis Wilhelm von Littenheim team up to overthrow the young Kaiser and get rid of Reinhard von Lohengrin. Count Franz von Mariendorf wants to join the conspiracy, but his daughter, Hildegard, convinces him to side with Reinhardt's rising order instead. She goes to Reinhardt and offers her family's allegiance. The High Nobles create the Lippstadt League, led by Braunschweig and Littenheim. High Admiral Willibald Joachim von Merkatz is pressured by Braunschweig to command their military forces. 6th of April 797 UC, Reinhardt strikes first and manages to arrest many conspirators, but Braunschweig and Littenheim flee and regroup most of their forces in the Geiersburg fortress. Whenever we're in an Imperial episode, there's just so many German names that I have to,
It's tough. I try not to remember them, to be honest. It's just too difficult for me.
I think the first time going through the show, I just didn't really remember. Yeah, I didn't remember half the names we came up against.
Yeah.
But by the time you get to the end and you know all of the important characters, then they're kind of lodged in there for the next run, I think.
I think most of the main characters have got reasonably sensible names, like at least names that are easy to remember, like Royenthal and Mittermeier. It's not like von Braunschweig,
Yeah.
So, Kumail, I hear you fell asleep during this episode. Do you want to tell us what your thoughts were?
Well, yeah, that's true, but I did quite like it. I did quite like it.
Oh.
I'll tell you what, this episode felt like the opening minutes especially felt like it was a previously on, but the previously on had not previously happened, or I didn't see them. A lot happens very quickly. Like this episode takes place in April, and I think the last time we were fully caught up on things was like January or February. So it's been some time. A lot of things that they breadcrumbed in earlier with the other two nobles wanting to get rid of the Kaiser and the internal civil war that was going to happen just started happening immediately. It was very quick, very, very quick. Like the pace of the show is really upped compared to how it began.
Yep.
It felt a bit, especially with the narrator, it felt like a documentary on historical events that were happening or had happened, I should say. One image in particular is when the Lippstadt League, when they're signing their document in the the fields with all the men surrounding them. The image that they show is like a hatched drawing, like it's out of a history textbook. It's not the traditional anime style that they show.
Ah, yeah, you're right.
And
like a court sketch.
Yeah, exactly. And the document that's being signed is being signed with like feathered quills. Now, this is a show about spaceships, and so it seems very deliberate that they would do that. Like everything feels, especially on this Imperial side, I just kept thinking everything is so symbolic of an earlier, better age that's what it keeps feeling like they're talking about, which I think mirrors what happens in the next episode as well. But we can get there.
Yeah, these are both episodes that are obsessed with heroic pasts or lost heroic pasts, right? You have the Imperial side desperate to kind of reinstate some rightful heir in quotation marks to the Kaiser, and on the Free Planet side, the reclamation of Heinesen's original dream by taking it over with a military coup. But obviously, we'll get to episode 19.
We'll get to that.
Yeah.
I like the this is not very related to what you were going to say, but at the beginning of the episode it opens and it's set in this bar on a space station or a spaceship or something, and I just thought it looked like a cool bar because it's got this massive glass dome or window or something you just see out into all of the stars. And
I agree. It really reminded me of the bar from Evangelion, like from NGE, where they're like, it overlooks like the city under the dome. So like it kind of looks quite similar where they're like sitting along the window. Yeah, it was a very cool bar.
This was on the transit ship, right? That was
with Hilda.
Yeah.
Hilda's listening in to these nobles scheming.
Yeah. And then we get a flashback of her, I don't know, her decision that she made to side her family with Lohengrin.
Yeah.
Was this the introduction of her and her family?
Actually, no. The first time I watched it, I thought that this was the introduction of Hilda. I was like, who's this character? She's just like come out of left field. But actually, she was in a previous episode, which I realized on second viewing. You know the episode where they're like discussing, there's like the old guy who stays on the planet despite the FPA fleet arriving, and he's like, oh, I'm going to go down with the ship. The Mariendorfs are in that episode, and they escape the planet, which is super weird, like why they're there. But I guess the show just introduces them earlier on, and then they reappear. So her and her father, are in that episode, but only really briefly. They're like side characters.
Yeah, this felt like a reintroduction for them then.
Yeah, I think it's the first meaningful introduction because that episode they barely spend any time on them.
I think the show does quite a good job of building her character pretty quickly in this episode. She's very you can tell like the ambition that she has. It's very, very obvious from the beginning. She's clearly very, very bright and very decisive as well. She doesn't really hold back in her judgments and just delivering what she thinks about how things are going. I don't know how you felt. I thought she makes for quite a compelling character in an episode where you don't really know anything about her before, compared to some of the episodes we've talked about previously, where the kind of that were set on other planets, and you suddenly get introduced to this new soldier who's quite boring. This felt different the way they introduced this new character.
I think one of the defining things about having a good character is that they're like active rather than reactive, right? Having like reactive characters is generally pretty boring unless you can tell it in an interesting way, like their internal world or this sort of thing. And Hilda is definitely an active character, as opposed to like a lot of the other women in the show. Even Frederica, I think, who we see in the next episode, is quite reactive and not like doesn't have the same level of ambition that Hilda has, or that we don't really know what she wants. I think you're right in the last episode to point out that Jessica is similar in that sense. But she was very, very compelling in this episode. I really liked the conversation with her and her father. I liked that for the first time we had a not shit dad. Like every single flashback with like someone's dad in this show is always like, oh, my dad was terrible. He's like the worst person ever. And her dad is like, he like respects her opinion, and he listens to her input, and then he's like, I trust the fate of the family to you. It was a surprise, I guess.
We're not the only fans of Hilda, so is Lowengram when they meet, right? When they have like tea or whatever at the Admiralty, I think.
Yeah.
Lowengram seems to really enjoy her whole vibe.
Yeah.
And has a good laugh about it as well.
I liked that. So this is also a thing that I picked up from the Icebergs blog, which there's a good blog, and they kind of got this across way better than I could, even though we're doing this podcast. That Lowengram does not flirt with Hilda at all, and she doesn't flirt with him. Like in a lesser show, you have a man and a woman meeting for the first time over coffee to discuss their political schemes. You would expect there to be some romantic tension or this sort of thing. And it's just not present. Like Lowengram is just entertained by her and intrigued by her and interested in her. And Hilda is kind of playing him a little bit, right? Like she asks directly for the written contract, which you should always ask for everything in writing, especially from your boss. Asks for the written contract, and Lowengram agrees to it. They kind of find something fascinating about each other. And I think that's also driven home when Reinhardt leaves, and not only is he asked to go for dinner with her, then he swishes his cape, which is often a sign of emotional intensity going on inside of Reinhardt von Lohengram. And then Oberstein looks at her like, "You stay away from him, you homewrecker! Don't you dare!"
I think it's fine.
No, she doesn't acknowledge. No,
yeah,
no.
Lohengram's romantic needs are all currently satisfied, I think, by Kirkjai, so it's all
yeah,
good.
Exactly. Yeah.
But I did think it's jumping towards the end of this episode, but he has a chat with a couple of other guys at the end of the episode who have defected from the they've kind of defected after losing the very brief civil war incident that happened on the planet. And one, he asks, do you want to side with me and serve me? And he says, no, I'm just going to not do this anymore. And the other one comes in and he's very blunt. And Lowengram seems to realize that he's kind of an effective soldier, maybe, but does not really want to be responsible for him. Doesn't take as much of an interest as he did with like Hilda, for example. And kind of just palms him off to Oberstein.
Yeah.
It's like, this is, you use him now. You don't trouble me with this guy anymore.
Yeah, we can jump back to this as well later, but I feel like that those three meetings that they have in this episode are all instructive, I guess, of what Reinhardt values. Because that last guy who asked to join him and is like, "Oh, I need to be under a leader who will value my talents and my loyalty." Reinhardt immediately recognizes him as being similar to Oberstein, someone who has talents that can be used, but is not particularly loyal, is more Machiavellian. And so, he just says, "Go and make him useful," is the phrase he uses, right? Like, make this person.
You can be Oberstein's Oberstein.
Yeah.
Is this the guy who tried to assassinate him?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. He's like, no hard feelings. Yeah, no hard feelings.
To be fair, it was a pretty shitty assassination attempt.
Yeah, he's like hiding in the alleyway, and he's like, "That Reinhardt, he's too smart for my shenanigans." And it's like, you literally just marched up to his house with a bunch of soldiers in the middle of the night. Which, it's a classic way to assassinate someone. It works more often than you'd think, but it's hardly very sneaky.
I mean, maybe me playing 50 hours of Hitman has like biased my thinking on this, but I feel like assassinating should be sneakier than walking through the front door with a battalion.
Right. Maybe he was planning to, but Helmut Kruger wasn't playing that day, so he couldn't take on his identity.
True.
Yeah, I don't know if the Empire has come up with canned Coke yet. Just launch a can several hundred meters.
Yeah.
I mean, that building, his home, kind of does look like a Hitman level.
It does, yeah.
You know, during that scene, I did keep thinking, like, so the battalion's out there, then they're exchanging laser gunfire with Lone Graham's, you know, guards, and then he just stares at them out the window, and his sister comes to the window and just stares out at what's happening, and he's like, "Chill, don't worry about it." But like, surely one shot through that window that'll be it.
Yeah, I guess so. I thought that whole scene was quite weird, to be honest. Like, she comes into the room, and the framing is very like romantic. And you're like, this is weird. I don't like this at all.
There's always been that kind of slightly odd framing around their relationship.
Yeah.
I don't think ever really goes away.
Also, we're definitely going to get some nerd emailing us if we keep calling these guns. I know that they're particle lancers, but just whenever we say laser, just assume we mean particle lance.
Is that the official name of the weapon?
Yeah, it's like a projected beam of charged particles. It's people are very So it's the same. I'm a physicist. They're the same. You can just use the word laser. They're not the same, but you can use the word laser.
Do they say it in the show?
Yeah, they call them particle beams on the ship. But weirdly, I think the ships have lenses on the front, and that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So, you know, it's a science fiction show. It's fine. Going back to Hilda and Lowengraham's conversation, which is probably the most important moment of the episode. I thought that Reinhardt put too much milk in his coffee. And
that was a lot. You're right.
Yeah, now I think back. I'm surprised you didn't call him out on that. It would have been too.
Yeah, he just really went for it.
Probably. Yeah.
When he's pouring the milk and it focuses down on the cup.
Yeah,
that's the same moment Hilda's saying, "I'm putting all my eggs in your basket." Like I'm
right. Yeah.
So is it meant to imply like he's surprised and therefore not considering the amount of milk he's putting? Like he's been distracted, so therefore he puts even too much.
I see.
Well, they're both milking it a bit. Yeah.
Yeah. Very good.
He says that Kirky Ice is it's such a shame Kirky Ice isn't here. You kind of know him, right? He's not. Oh, you just missed him. What a shame. As he's like pouring all of this extra cream into his coffee. It's like, such a shame he's not here. Kirky Ice definitely would have said something.
He wasn't in the whole episode, right?
He was at the very beginning when they shook. No, wait, was that in the next episode?
He's supposed to be there at the mansion, right? Like Lowengraham says Kirky Ice is single-handedly, well, not single-handedly. He's running he's in charge of the whole operation to defend the. Don't worry, Kirky Ice is single-handedly defending this mansion against this assassination attempt.
Yeah, you're right. He does. He's like, don't worry, sister. The man that you supposedly have some romantic affection for is taking on the enemy single-handed, and it's going to be fine. And it's going to be fine. Just stand by this window for a while. I'm sure you won't get hit by a laser. And then she's like, actually, it's not a laser. It's a common misunderstanding.
Your subtitles are very different to mine. It felt a bit like they kept mentioning Kirky Ice, but he wasn't showing up. Like in some TV shows where an actor is not available for the shooting that week, and so he's just not in that episode.
That was kind of my assumption, yeah. Because he's not really in the second one either. Like in the second episode, they shake hands for like an uncomfortably long time while everyone else in the room is like, should we leave? Or like, but he doesn't actually say anything. They just like stare at each other wistfully. So I assume they couldn't.
But they sent him off to do something separately, don't they? At the beginning of the next episode, which I kind of felt like maybe could have been hacked onto the end of this one because it was not really relevant for the rest of the episode. And might have kind of summed up this absence that he's not really in this episode.
I mean, it's also almost a rule at this point that every FPA heavy episode has to have some random Kirky Ice and Lowengraham interaction just chucked in there just to mix things up. So like when they were talking about him being a planet.
Yeah. Well, they know what the fans want. Can I ask you a question about this episode? Something that confused me is the Lippstadt League. Their sort of rebellion is being led by the admiral who had the Lohengram's role before Lohengram. Yes, it was the previous guy.
Admiral
Merkatz.
Oh, Merkatz, yeah.
Now, why has he agreed to lead this? It's not clear to me why he. It didn't seem like he really.
Yeah. So I mean, Merkatz is a very complicated character. He'll continue to. He will come up again, and he's quite. He's not simple in his motivations. I think. Well, the obvious answer, right, is that the guy threatens his daughter, right? Like Braunschweig basically is like, the cost of having a daughter is a great sacrifice to the god Odin. And the camera goes kind of dark as he's saying this, and then he has this like smirk on his face, like. So I guess he feels compromised in that sense. But also, I think Merkatz, as we find out later in the show, is kind of a loyalist. He believes in the throne as it, he believes in a powerful throne. He believes in the Kaiser's like family line. I can't remember the name of.
The Goldenbaum.
Yeah, Goldenbaum. He believes in the Goldenbaum dynasty, and all this kind of stuff. So I think also like he's getting on, right? Like he's pretty old. They make a whole point of that. So probably too late now to change his position, I suppose. But yeah,
I think the loyalist thing is kind of the he does stay very principled throughout his appearances in the show, and I think this he has this loyalism to the Kaiser's lineage and the aristocracy, I guess, and Lohengram doesn't really fit into that. But he's definitely not happy about his what he's been asked to do.
Seems incredibly unhappy, right? Like he basically says no about 3 times, and Braunschweig basically then says you have to, and then threatens his daughter. So Merkatz has kind of been forced into it.
I like the scene after this where he's in the car and he's talking to his subordinate, but like Schneider. He's like leaning against the window of the car and his face is reflected in the window, which I thought was just quite cool. It's more like he's talking to himself than he is talking to this subordinate who's in the car with him. I thought it was quite well presented.
Yeah. We basically teaches Schneider some basic rules of politics, right? Schneider is like, this is great. It means you get to go to war against like a powerful enemy, right? Like, isn't that the dream of any soldier? Yeah. And Merkatz is just like, you stupid moron. Obviously, this isn't going to go the way you think it's going to go. And people are going to still hold grudges after all this is over. And it kind of feels like he's stuck between a rock and a hard place.
I got the sense in part, the reason he didn't want to do this was because he didn't want to go up against Lohengram, who seems to respect, not only his position but his ability.
I got the impression that he doesn't respect Lohengram's political position. Like he respects his ability as an admiral, but I think he doesn't like Lohengram's kind of upstart nature. The fact he's come in from nowhere and taken on this position.
It's a real boomer Gen Z divide.
Yeah, even though
they'd
probably get along, if they spent a few minutes together. But he's just too much of a boomer, stuck in his ways. You're right about this episode kind of drawing back and seeming like a historical documentary, because once things start going south, like once the assassination fails and then we get we basically just get a montage of like Reinhardt's plan falling into place, like all these things that he's set up and the audience didn't get to see, right? Like we got to see the Lippstadt side making their schemes and planning their assassinations just completely incompetently, and then when something, when the moment arrives, we get to see Reinhardt's kind of plan unfold, where he imprisons like 1/5 of all the people who are conspiring against him and forces them to run away. And
you have one of his like key admirals or more than one at each of these different sites where he's managed to capture people or stop the invasion. This like incredible crew he's developed. I like the bit where Bittenfeld just walks in with a gun to the surrounded by henchmen to demand the something to be signed over to the Ministry of Affairs or something, or
I
don't remember.
Oh, is that when the dude is like, do you guys not have any manners when you do a coup? And he puts his gun away and is sorry.
You're right. But
there's a way that coups are done here in the Empire. Well, we see this often with Bittenfeld, right? There's a really good exchange between Bittenfeld and Mecklenburg, who we haven't really seen much of.
The guy with the big moustache and the long hair.
He's the guy with the moustache, who we don't really hear very much about until like season 4 or something. But then Bittenfeld is like, "Oh, that's not going to be a big deal, like Lohengrin will wipe the floor with Merkatz." And then Mecklenburg is like, "An army of lions led by a sheep will be defeated by an army of sheep led by a lion." You're like, "Dang, that's cold." It's such a good line. And also,
he turns out to be like a poet or a painter or artist or something at some point, right? Like that's his side story we get at some point. So it's nice that he gets given the poetic line there.
I think in a future episode he actually paints someone's portrait, right? Like that's a whole plot line.
Yeah. I don't know when that is. Yeah.
Can I tell you what I was thinking during that scene? Is that
I'm very sleepy.
Well, maybe you'll infer this based on what my thought actually was, which was when they were showing all of those high-level crew members, including the man with the mustache, I was thinking, these guys have some of the worst haircuts I've ever seen especially for an anime, which is famous for their good haircuts. And these are just, and especially in comparison to some of the haircuts we see on the Planetary Alliance side in the next episode. Just bad. They need new barbers on the Imperial side, I think.
Yeah. You don't think they're made to intentionally look old, like old-fashioned, the haircuts? Because like Braunschweig has this like ridiculous American revolutionary ponytail. Yeah. He looks terrible.
I agree. I do. Yes, certainly. I also think they're just bad haircuts.
Do you feel that the worse the Imperial haircut, the more evil the character is? Because so far in my mind, for the most part, this tracks. Because Lohengram's hair, it's just kind of unkempt, like.
I think he's got pretty great hair.
Yeah, famously got good hair. Yeah, everyone says so. Kircheis's hair, just red. It's just short and red. And then Reuenthal and Mittermeier both got okay hair. And we'll have to rank the haircuts and then see.
Yeah. There's the guy with the kind of, who is he? He's like, he's kind of Lohengram's nemesis, who's already tried to.
Oh, yeah. Flegel.
Flegel, yeah.
Flegel.
His hair's pretty bad. And he's pretty bad guy.
Yeah, it's like he went in and he was like, "Give me a Ray Iron army." And then
you're like, I don't know if that's going to work for you.
Your hair's not going to do that. It's not. You got the wrong face shape. Just do it, okay? Just give me the hair. Yeah, he's maybe got the worst hair in the show. Although I really hate Frederica's hair. Flegel's hair. I don't want to give you any spoilers, but
no. You've mentioned how much you hate Frederica's hair before.
Yeah, it's terrible. It's atrocious. I think I've mentioned it every episode. Every time she's on screen and you see her from the back, she's got that little like rat tail hanging down the back of her hair. And I just think it looks bad. Maybe that was cool in the 80s, but
I think it was. I was going to ask, do they ever redesign characters between seasons? How they do sometimes in anime with like time skips and stuff.
yes, they do. Yes, they do. I think final season Lowengram looks considerably different from Lowengram in season 1. Yeah. He
I want to spoil it, but
yeah, I don't want to spoil it, but he goes through an emo phase, you know.
That's pretty good. I'm looking forward to it.
Guy's hair black.
Yeah.
How does this episode end?
It ends with a very classic sign off from the narrator where he says the war for whatever has just begun. And that what did I write down? And that would be the beginning of tragedy. And then
the beginning of tragedy.
Yeah.
And they're heading somewhere, right?
They're heading off to Gieseberg or whatever it's called.
Geiersberg. Which is another fortress, a bit like Isilon, yeah, which is where...
Right.
Yeah. But we also get Reinhardt officially labeling the fleet as the Rebel fleet. A little rhetorical device there where he connects the Lippstadt rebellion with the Alliance, right, with the FPA, which my subs even made a point of, as if I wouldn't have figured that out. It was like, oh, by the way, the FPA, that's what they call the FPA. It's like, I was watching the show before.
Your subtitles were offering you subtext as well.
Yeah. They did the thing with like the meme.
Yeah.
Like, just according to KQ. KQ is Japanese for plan.
I think your subtitles are better than mine.
Yeah, I can send you them. But obviously, the difference between our subs is actually, it's a good point. Of was there a mention of an octopus? Oh, we'll get to it in the next episode. There was one more thing that I wanted to say about this episode as well, is that Reinhardt's Japanese is so casual all the time. I can understand why everyone's so annoyed with him. Because there's a bit when he comes into the room and Oberstein's standing there. He's just like, Dorka. Doesn't even ask him, like, how are you doing? He's just like, how is it? Like, and then there's another time, like, when she says, like, oh, I will, if it's okay with your majesty, I will, or like with your highness, I will kind of find all of these other nobles. And he's just like, Dozo, yeah, I do it. Why not? Like, must be so annoying. And kind of lost in translation if you're reading the subs.
Is that implied to be a lack of respect, or is it impatience on his part? Is he Mark Zuckerberg in the social network?
Yeah, I mean, he's supposed to be this young upstart, right? He doesn't have time for these sorts of things. I don't think, but I think obviously it would come across as like impertinent to other characters, or impolite, or impudent. Maybe I used the wrong word. But yeah, there was another one we mentioned like a while back when he asked Kirkiai's name for the first time, and he's just like, Namai, like he's literally just said like name, like no question, no like address to the person. It's just like walking up to someone, like, name, like it's like just unbelievably rude all the time, and just reducing. Anyway, I just thought it was interesting.
That does sound a lot like Mark Zuckerberg from the social network, and I think I'm going to run with this theory for as long as I can. That
good.
Mark Zuckerberg's character was based off of Lowengram from Legend of the Galactic Heroes.
The real person, Mark Zuckerberg's character, was based on Lowengram. I thought Mark Zuckerberg based his character on Mark Antony.
Yeah, maybe this is the reference point.
Because of the haircut.
Because he's like obsessed with Mark Antony, right?
That is why he has the haircut. Yeah,
that is why he got the haircut. Yeah.
Oh right, okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's pretty cringe.
That's really... I didn't know that. That's really funny.
I don't think it's been like completely confirmed, but he said that he's a huge fan of Mark Antony. It just so happens to have the same hair as Mark Antony. He's like, no, it's just a coincidence. It just suits my face, you know. It really doesn't.
Can I tell you something off topic? On topic of this, which is that I've written the script for Khalil Volume 2, Book 2, and I introduced Lex Luthor in it. as the CEO of like the biggest defense contractor in the world. You know, not unlike a giant tech CEO who has more power than they should on global affairs, let's say. And I also wrote him to be obsessed with Alexander the Great. And like the comparisons are drawn between their lives, sometimes explicitly, sometimes implicitly. But it's just strange that another giant tech CEO who has impact on global affairs far larger than they should is obsessed with another huge historical figure. I didn't.
I mean,
that.
I think it's probably not or well observed, maybe in your writing. That I mean, I think this is probably true of a lot of people who rise to these positions. Who, if you get there, you have to be so ambitious to get there and so confident to rise to these positions. Lots of people who are like that will never end up in those positions. But if it so happens that you are the person that it did happen to, it must be quite easy to buy into the narrative that it was because you were like one of these people that you admired, that you're obsessed with from the past. I don't know how Elon Musk sees himself. Probably like he's obsessed with Dune, which is maybe even more cringe than being obsessed with the real history. But
I think it's Steve Jobs for him. He's obsessed with.
Steve Jobs. Yeah. It's also pretty cringe. I think Tom is right. I think you're probably just, or you've probably successfully tapped into just a reality of powerful people. But I think probably, I think it's partly like a coincidence that like if you make it, then you're like, oh yeah, I really am like Mark Antony, or I am like, these people. But to an extent, it must be the other way around a little bit as well, right? Like if you have the opportunity to become powerful, but you admire like Diogenes or like, or like Simeon the Stylite, you're not going to become like the head of Apple, right? You're going to become a miserable desert dweller. So probably a bit of both.
Can I tell you where I got the idea from?
Yeah.
You know the episode of The Simpsons where Homer gets inspired by Edison and tries to become a great inventor, and then Edison, he finds out that Edison was obsessed with Da Vinci.
Yeah.
It was that episode of The Simpsons.
I mean, I think this is universally the case that a lot of the wisdom of the ancients has been passed down by the Simpsons writers to our generation. So that's
it's like
they were doing God's work.
They've summarized it and like condensed it and
it is astonishing.
It 22 minutes.
Yeah, it is astonishing because you watch stuff from like the 50s or whatever, and you're like, oh fuck, this is referenced, but I don't remember the Simpsons referencing this. Like it's like you've got this framework for reaching into the past, which is just I think a very strong statement to make about the Simpsons, but I do think it's true. Like how many people got into Gilbert and Sullivan because of the Simpsons,
Right.
Like
what's this great song Sideshow Bob is singing? Yeah.
It's a shame that they'd watch HMS Pinafore first. It's the worst one, but still.
Anyway, that was my sidetrack for the day.
It was a good segue into a self-plug as well, I have to say.
Good job.
Yeah, Kumail has a series of books available, actually, if you're interested in paying for them. That's genuine. You should buy Kumail's books. I'll cut this.
Yeah, you're editing this one. I don't know that I have much more to say on this episode.
I think I've gone through all of my notes. Oh, wait, there was a bit when that made me laugh. It's not even an important thing, but Lowengraham's like, fine, let's be friends. And then he just has a chuckle to himself. And I just thought that would have made a good reaction gif.
Is that when he does his full evil laugh?
With Hilda, yeah.
Yeah. Does Lowengraham also have, we're talking about people obsessed with historical figures from the past. Is he himself, does he have any sort of adoration for the founder of the Golden Bound dynasty or anything like that.
He doesn't reference anyone, right? He seems to like resent the Golden Bounds, and he's like a neophyte, right? Like completely his own political agenda.
Yeah, more of a revolutionary, really, isn't
he? Yeah.
Yeah, I guess interesting that he's completely unlike that, I suppose.
Yeah, yeah. He's very intentionally a reference on the part of the writer to lots of these people, right? Like when we talk about Alexander the Great or Napoleon, all these people. But yeah, I think as a character, he doesn't have any grounding. Neither does Yang, right? Like he also doesn't have anyone he admires. He doesn't even see himself as like Heinesen, right?
Yeah.
Have they provided much of a characterization of what Heinesen was like?
Not at this point. I think we have an episode coming up at some point where we get like a bit more history of the FPA.
Could be a long time in the future. I don't remember.
Could be a while off, yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. I find I'm very interested in the lore of like how that all went down, of Heinesen creating the FPA, or who started the Golden Bound dynasty, and how, like, very interesting to find out how and when that happened, if they just tell it by characters discussing it, or if they show a flashback episode, or I think that'd be very cool.
Yeah, it comes out pretty slowly, I think. I'm sure Joel's thinking the same episode or two that I'm thinking of, where we get some of the history of the Alliance, which is told in a way that's kind of different to those things that you mentioned, but not too far off. But I think it doesn't happen until season 3 or 4. But yeah, we probably get bits and pieces until then.
Yeah,
I get the sense that this season 1 especially is about the mirrored journeys of Yang Wenli and Lowen Graham to the top of their respective sides, which like prefaces their future battles against each other. That's what it feels like. So many episodes that mirror each other's journey.
Yeah.
You're right. I think this first season is basically that. There's like a flirtation with open conflict between the two of them, but it doesn't really go anywhere, right? We see them rising within their respective spheres, and the episodes, as you say, like mirror each other. Like this next episode we'll talk about, episode 19, mirrors 18 very closely, but on the FPA side, which has its own internal problems. So,
yeah, I think you're meant to think of these two as a collective story.
They're
made better by having watched the other one.
I agree. Yep.
I think having a civil war at the same time on both sides gives the writer a chance to explore the idea of civil war and coups through every lens that he's set up so far. So it's, and then also it works quite well with the plot, like to prevent one side taking advantage of the other in this situation, to really be able to focus on the domestic problems.
Yeah.
So maybe we should move on to the next one.
Let's talk episode 19. Tom, do you want to read the intro for this one?
I'm going to do it. Episode 19, The Yang Fleet Goes Out. Good title. Reinhard von Lohengram decides to lead the main fleet against Geiersberg Fortress, while Siegfried Kircheis, assisted by Vice Admirals Cornelius Lutz and August Samuel Wahlen, will be in charge of suppressing the other rebel star zones. Meanwhile, in the Free Planets Alliance, Andrew Falk is discharged from hospital. Hoping to be reinstated to active duty, Falk approaches Joint Operations Headquarters Chief Kubelsley to make a direct request. After Kubelsley reproves him for trying to bypass proper channels, Falk shoots him in anger, critically injuring him. This incident ignites the chain of events that occur right afterwards, on 3rd of April, 797 UC. A military uprising takes place in the planet Neptes, followed by similar uprisings in the planets Kaffa, Palmland, and Shampul over the next few days. Finally, on the 13th of April, a military coup is successfully staged in the planet Heinesen. The usurpers, led by Admiral Dwight Greenhill, style themselves as the National Salvation Military Council, NSMC, and suspends the democratic institutions of the alliance. High Council Chairman Job Troonheit goes into hiding. Yang Wenli decides to fight for democracy. The Yang fleet leaves Isilon Fortress on 20th of April to suppress the coup d'etat, while the NSMC-aligned 11th Fleet goes out to stop it.
Goes out on 420. Coincidence?
Yeah.
Okay.
What an episode. I thought this was a great one. I like this even more than the previous one.
Mm-hmm.
This one's a lot of fun, yeah. The opening is so good when Andrew Falk comes over and is like, is that Andrew Falk? Because sometimes the character models are a little bit iffy, so it's sometimes hard to figure out who the characters are. And they're like, is that Falk? And he comes over and he's like, I'm Andrew Falk. I got better. I'm good now. And the guy's like, I don't know. You don't seem so hot to me. And then he just pulls out.
He says, I heard you were in a sanatorium.
Yeah, it's like Victorian England. Yeah, I'm not crazy anymore. And then he pulls out a gun, which is something that only a sane person would do, and shoots the admiral.
I have a series of notes on separate lines where I realized it was Andrew Falk, and I was like, Falk is back. That's the first line. And then there's a dashed line underneath that says, and he does a crime. And then a one after that, and accidentally kicks off a military revolt. I just kind of forgot that these three things that he managed in succession reappearing in the show was just kind of interesting to start with, and these subsequent events.
Despite his incompetence, he is incredibly competent at moving the plot along. Every time he's on screen, something truly terrible happens.
He's proactive, not reactive.
He is proactive. I'll say that about him. Yeah.
I just realized in the previous episode we had a assassination attempt that went disastrously bad. And in this episode we had an assassination attempt that leads to disaster.
It's true. It's like poetry. It's like they rhyme.
There's a bit after this scene where everyone's kind of finding out about the military revolt, and I think it's when Julian is on the Travelator and he's talking to Poplan and Konev, is he called? And I think Federica's there, Konev. And the guy with the spiky hair is there. And in the background, the theme tune to the show is playing. The Skies of Love is playing in the background of the scene. And I found it very disconcerting.
Okay. I found this so confusing when it happened. I was like, why have they chosen to do this?
Yeah, and then I read 2 video things open at once. Did I accidentally start another episode in the background?
Okay, so another shout out to the blog Icebergs. They pointed out on this blog why this is the case. So in the intro to the show, there's Julian and, in the OP, Julian and Yang are standing with their backs to the camera. Okay. And then to their left and right, members of the Yang gang start coming past, and they're not walking, they're just sliding past, one by one. And the person in the blog was like, I had not realized before that this is not some sort of dreamlike imagery that's taking place. They're literally just on travelators going past each other. And so when they open this episode they have this section on the episode where they're on the travelators, that's why. And I was like, it's genius.
It's kind of a weird musical motif to use in that moment, though. I
don't get why they did it, but at least it makes more sense than no sense,
Yeah, I guess so.
Do you think it would have been better if instead of in the background of it being The Skies of Love, they replaced that audio with an episode of the podcast In the Skies of Love? It's just us talking.
I would like to have it started like that. Julian's on the Travelator with a pair of headphones on, and you can just kind of hear the tinny sound of our podcast playing, and then he gets interrupted by Poplan, and he's pulls one of his ear cans off to talk to him, pauses his iPhone or whatever.
Poplan's like, Audio Technica ATH series. That's excellent choice.
Hopefully they do that for the remake.
Yeah. Lost opportunity otherwise.
Yeah.
Or I think it should have just had maybe Yang Wenli walking down some corridor, humming "The Skies of Love" to himself.
That would have been way better.
Yeah,
that would have been way better. Yeah. Then like in The Simpsons, again, second Simpsons reference, when Bart comes downstairs and he's humming the Simpsons theme, and Marge is like, "Bart, what have I told you about singing that annoying song?" They could have opened like that.
Yeah.
Given enough time, I think The Simpsons will do a parody of the Legend of the Galactic Heroes.
I'd be shocked if they haven't already.
They did
like
definitely
somewhere
recently.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. That won like an award or something, which is a shock to me. But
is it right after the Travelator scene where we get the inside look with the head of the entire military finding out about all of the coups, and he's like, Yang Wenli told me this was going to happen. How am I going to ever show my face to him again?
So this was also pointed out to me. Is that like, this is Yang told him that a coup was going to happen, and he was like, "Make sure you do something about it." And then he's like, "Yeah, don't worry, I got it. I'll take it in hand. It's all going to be fine." And there just wasn't fine. And like the plot doesn't give you like a good reason for why. It's just like subverting your expectations of the audience. This is like the Andrew Falk heart attack all over again, where you're like, "What? Why has this happened?" Like, yeah, he just messed up. Sometimes it happens.
I think there's a lesson learned for Bucock in this moment where he's like, yeah, I should have done something about this.
Yeah, right. But so the coup starts. Bucock hasn't done anything to sort it out, and then Yang gets a call. Well, actually, Yang gets a call. They're like, "Oh, 4 planets near Isilon have gone rogue, and we need you to send out the Yang gang to take care of them."
Yeah.
By the way, this is the first time that every single member of Yang's staff is present. Fun fact: this is the first episode where everyone is on Isilon Fortress together, because Kazelnu is the last member of the official members of the family
for now. Yeah, before that, before he goes into the council and they discuss it, he just has the scene with Kazelnu and Julian, where he hears this information from Dawson, I think he's called, the guy on Heinessen. And there's a lengthy close up of Yang Wenli's cat in this scene. Again, I just like it when the cat's on screen. And then Yang asked Julian what he thinks like their plan should be to take down all of these four planets at once. And Julian comes up with like a decent idea, and Yang kind of tells him how to refine the strategy. And Julian's like eyes, they don't have a close up of his face. His eyes vibrate with like amazement when he hears Yang's plan. I'm going to try and find like a gif of this moment, because they're really vibrating in amazement.
Just absolute adoration.
Yeah.
I really loved this scene. I think it could have come across as hokey, but I really loved it, because it like reveals so much about both Julian and Yang and their relationship and why they work so closely together. That Julian suggests an idea, and Yang isn't like, "No, that wouldn't work because of this." He's like, "That's a great idea, but you haven't considered this aspect of it." It's like a very nurturing and very positive kind of teaching method.
Yeah.
I thought it was lovely. I thought the interaction was very, very cute.
Seems like he would be a good teacher.
Yeah.
I think Calzone teases them both by being like, "Oh, Professor Yang's lecture is over now. We need to go do this other thing," or something. Which I think, also stops it being so hokey, I guess, as well.
Yeah.
I think it also just reinforces the idea that, like, Yang was just given the order to do this on that phone call, and by the time the conversation ends 3 minutes later, he's developed 2 fully thought out plans that are that will definitely work. It really speaks to his competence at this.
Yeah, we get shown his genius rather than told about it. Right?
Mm-hmm.
I also just like, from a directorial standpoint, that the conversation is dynamic. Like, Yang is getting ready and putting his tie on and folding his shirt, like cleaning his shirt off and all this kind of stuff. Just I don't know, the whole thing could have been very static and very hokey, as you say, but there's a huge amount of confidence on display with the writing here. Yeah, and then he pats Julian on the head, which I thought was a little condescending, but
Julian's how old? He's 14, 15.
I think he's 15 now in this series. Yeah.
14 or 15 maybe.
And Yang's 30, which I didn't know. He's actually older than I thought he was.
Yes. But much younger than every other admiral, right?
Yes.
Which is a key point with his friction. I really liked that he was like, why does Dawson not like me so much? And then Kozul is like, but by the way, that we're going to change the way we pronounce his name every single episode time, because how do you, it's like, Julian, tell him what the problem is. And then Julian's like, you're too young and he's too old. And Yang's like, what the fuck? What does that have to do with anything? Is it? No, okay, it's not after that. Okay, so after that we have a staff meeting.
Yeah.
Where it's revealed.
Yes.
That Heinesen is under military junta occupation.
Yeah. With an incredible list of edicts that they've handed out, just one after another. Martial law. We're going to blatantly control the press. We are just going to arrest loads of people. We're probably going to sentence a bunch of people to death. Just everything. Martial law. Did I read that one?
Government benefits. And I was like, wow, the Tories.
Yeah, got to slip that one in there.
Yeah.
It is the laundry list of the nasty party. Oh yeah, we need a national unity in order to defeat the empire. Oh yeah, also we're going to get rid of benefits. Yeah, especially for single mothers, because those guys have been leeching off the state for too long. They've been lounging around doing nothing. And now we're stepping in to do something about it. And then it's revealed who is the head of the coup. The big reveal. Who's the head of the coup?
Big twist.
Big twist.
I didn't see it coming.
No. I mean, I've already seen the show, but I remember being shocked the first time.
Yeah.
I was surprised at how shocked I was, to be honest.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it only clucked for me. Frederica stands up and she's like, she's got shaky eyes because that's how they animate tears or whatever. And then other people are surprised, and Yang Wenli, he's looking around like, huh? What are you guys so surprised by?
Oh, yeah.
And then I realized who it had to be. And very surprising.
Yeah, it kind of does come out of left field because we don't really know very much about this guy. We've seen him a couple of episodes beforehand, but we mostly know him through Frederica. And as we were talking about in the previous episode with Hilda's good dad being like, I love you, Hilda, you're the best, look after the family. Frederica's dad, he's kind of a shithead. He's kind of a deadbeat, taking over countries like that. And that's just not the mark of a good father. I don't want to judge. I know parenting is hard.
He left her to die on Yang Wenli's ship, presumably because he thinks he'll win and destroy it.
Yeah, she's probably not there. She's probably not going to be there, so it's probably fine. Yeah, it's probably
later
fine.
On. He says I paid the price of my daughter by leading this coup.
Yeah,
and you're like, oh, it's definitely going to pay off, man. What a smart decision to go up against the greatest military genius of your generation.
Who I've just handed my only daughter to.
Who has my daughter potentially as a prisoner.
Yeah.
While my staff is made up of just a handful of nameless shit munchers who are just going to lead their ragtag fleets against Yang Wenli. Just seems. And then at the end, he's like at the end of the episode, he's rationalizing it. He's like, oh, there's nothing else I could have possibly done. What else could I possibly have done? I don't know. Anything else? You could have just done nothing.
There's another bit of mirroring happening here, right? With Murkat's running the rebellion in the Imperial side to protect his daughter, and Greenhill doing it in spite of his daughter.
I hadn't caught that. Yep, that's cool.
Mirroring is about the only thing I can catch, so I always make sure to.
Yeah, I think obviously, yeah. Okay, so Frederica is shocked. We get some every single but close up of her face. She has a new level of shock. This is what I felt when I was watching it. It was like she starts off quite shocked, and then the camera pulls away, and then it zooms in on her again, and she's more shocked. Her eyes are vibrating more, and then it pulls away again, and then the third time it's nuclear level shaking and shock. So, is it straight to the meeting between Yang and Frederica after that, or is there some interstitial?
I think it's maybe it's directly after. I don't think there's much in between.
Maybe we get the staff meeting with Greenhill, the junta staff meeting.
Yes, I think that is right.
Yeah,
where he sends out the 11th Fleet to kill or capture Yang Wenli.
Yeah.
Do they also underestimate once again?
How do people keep doing this?
Yeah.
I guess it's ego, but, No
way this 30-year-old could beat us.
Well, he sends out some nameless guy who, we've never seen before, and you're I wonder if he's going to beat Yang Wenli.
Yeah.
Maybe he's going to be the main character after this next episode. I don't know. I don't think he's long for this world. No.
So after that is when Frederica thinks she's going to be fired.
Yes. Yeah. Which I thought, again, great scene. I think also revealing of Yang, is just so everything about it is on point. For the characters involved. It's the first time I've felt much of a connection to Frederica, and you feel sympathy for her or concern for her. Yeah. Again, this was pointed out to me by someone else, but she uses a different pronoun when she comes into the room. In Japanese, she uses the formal pronoun for an employee or a subordinate, rather than the more informal pronoun for just a person, which is interesting, right? She comes in and she feels immediately subservient or subordinate to Yang because of his position and her father and all this kind of stuff. Nice little touch that would have been lost in the translation.
Does Yang Wenli have a similar, maybe not rudeness to Lowengram, but informality in how he speaks to everyone?
I would guess so. My Japanese is still pretty poor, but with Lowengram, it's really noticeable because he just shortens every sentence, doesn't bother putting in any subject or anything like that. But I don't know about Yang.
I think it's reasonably casual. Not as casual, like you say, but yeah, often reasonably casual, laid back.
Which is what he is during that meeting with Frederica.
Yeah.
And does not fire her. So why would I? You're this ship would fall apart without you.
Yeah, basically. Because I'm forgetful and I'm terrible at my job. I need someone to do all of the stuff that I can't do. And yeah, it doesn't even seem to have crossed his mind, right? Or at least he presents it that way. And given what we know about Yang now, my guess would be that it has barely crossed his mind.
I'm not sure. I had the feeling that he probably knew this was going to be a conversation they'd have to have, but he already knew that this was how he's going to resolve it.
Yep.
Because, Julian and Walter von Schenkop are loitering outside the door, so they both know it's going to go one way or the other. They're not really sure. So everybody's going to be thinking it. So I think Yang probably has thought about it, but his mind's just already made up, and it's just relaxed way of smoothing things over and keeping things just as they were, not make a big deal out of it. So you don't want the rest of your staff all gossiping or whatever. So you try and just downplay the whole thing.
Yeah, it's definitely not a difficult decision for him. Yeah, I think the whole scene's very touching, and I also think the fact that Schenkop and Julian are outside, and they're Shenkop's like, if he fires Frederica, then he's really an idiot, and he's not the man I thought he was. Just classic Shenkop gossiping, because that guy, he's gossipy as hell. Like, of all the characters on the, he's always doing this kind of stuff. And I also thought it was cute because we know that Julian and Shenkop are doing shooting lessons together. So I was like, why are they together? Oh yeah, they're probably like back from a shooting lesson. Nice, yeah.
But I do think it's like an intentional choice to put Shenkop there of all people as well.
Yeah,
I don't really have a good reason why it should be him who says that line. But I think it's kind of a nice. I don't know. We haven't really seen him much recently, and even just getting this one line where he backs Frederica in spite of her father's like coup, hopes that she keeps her job is quite interesting. I don't know. Reveals like a good kind of team spirit almost amongst the people under Yang's command. And maybe it's something to do with his imperial background as well, where he's seen this like splits within families before. I mean, his family history is kind of like this, I guess, where, your family ties shouldn't necessarily mean you lose out on your opportunities or whatever. And obviously he has his like segment in the next bit of the scene where he talks to Yang, which is also important.
Yeah, I think he does kind of reveal what he's thinking about it in his conversation with Yang, right? Like when he says, oh, if Yang fires her, then he's an idiot. And then he, in the next few seconds, basically, he tells Yang that he feels that Yang is basically a puzzle to be solved, right? Like he doesn't really understand him. He doesn't really understand his motivations or how his brain works. And clearly Shenkop is fascinated by Yang, but he doesn't have this same level of like complete adoration that we see on Julian's face or on Frederica's face or on most of the staff members, where they feel completely loyal to Yang. Shenkop is fascinated by him and interested in him. He is not like loyal just for the sake of it. And loyalty comes up all the time in these two episodes, right? Like, what is the nature of loyalty? Like in the previous episode we saw with these two defectors. And I think the conversation between Shenkop and Yang in this episode is probably the most important conversation that we've had in the whole show so far, in my mind. Like, this is a potential turning point and an enormous kind of showing of cards on both characters' parts between Shenkop and Yang. I don't know what you thought about it, Kumail.
I think it's interesting that you put it that way in regards to how Shenkop feels about what's his first name, Walter?
Yeah, Walter.
Yeah, what he thinks about Yang Wenli, because while he may not be able to get a full read on him, I think he trusts his like moral compass enough to suggest to him that the old world order is not working. This, coup's new world order is certainly not going to work, and maybe things would work a lot better with Mr. 30-year-old genius at the top of everything, which is, maybe speaks to how he understood things when he was on the Imperial side, and they had one man at the top of everything, and as long as you had the right man at the top, things could work better. But he wouldn't suggest that if he didn't think Yang Wenli could do that. I don't think so. He has enough faith in him to suggest that, I think.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think that Shenkop definitely believes in Yang. But yeah, also, I think he's telling the truth when he says he doesn't understand Yang. Because Shenkop, for all of his other qualities, is not like a political genius or like a deep thinker, particularly. He doesn't mull over things in the way that Yang does. And I think this strikes him as very difficult to get a handle on. And so the only way that he can get his feelings across about this potential dictatorship is to just directly talk about it to Yang and just tell him straight up what he thinks he should do.
Yeah, I think the Shenkop's loyalty or his belief system, which is not really at heart particularly democratic.
No.
He it's not the only time, I think, where he suggests a autocracy might be, I don't know, kind of a good idea. I don't think it's the only time this comes up. And because it's kind of different and his background is different to the rest of the Free Planets Alliance, you're never quite sure what it would take to push him over, like to the other side or something, to rebel or to. So yeah, I think the show keeps this in tension for a long time, as you're unsure where his loyalties really are. Is he loyal to Yang, or does he just really, he's really fascinated and he's just sticking around until he gets bored? Because he does seem to be motivated by boredom as well. And I think he's kind of an interesting character to have as part.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of read, because I think that Shenkop on some level like loves Yang. I think there is like a deep kind of emotional component to their relationship that I don't think is like romantic or just friendship. To me, it seems like the love between, like, because they frame him constantly as a knight character, like as this, like kind of chivalric hero or whatever. Yeah. This feels to me like the love between a knight and their lord.
Yeah.
But there is this additional component where as I say, is trying to puzzle out who Yang is, because he can't quite understand it, because he's not as smart as Yang, or because he's not as insightful as Yang, but he has the fortunate position of being close to him all the time, and gets to pick his brains, about these things, and gets to call him out on his own neuroses, right? Like, which he does in the next scene when Yang is like, I want Julian's options to be open. And Shenkop basically tells him off and is like, you're just because you feel trapped by the military, it doesn't mean that Julian feels trapped by the military. You're just being egotistical. And Yang's like, never really thought about it like that before. It's this like weird relationship that they have.
Yeah. I think that like Arthurian romantic way of looking at it seems very accurate to me. He's found his lord, and it's natural for him to champion his lord to become the best lord he can be and be in charge of even more stuff and take over more land. And he's like the sort of leader of this martial wing. Like, when he runs into combat with an axe, which is also quite, I don't know, like it's like I don't know, like Arthurian, I guess. Yep. Like he's like a knight, like you say.
I mean, there's huge Arthurian references throughout the show. We'll talk about them as they come up in the future.
Yeah.
But on the Imperial side, especially in the 4th season, there's lots and lots of Arthurian references. There's one extremely specific and obviously intentional reference, which we'll talk about when it comes up. It's a long way away. So the writer is aware of the myths, and I do wonder whether Shenkop to some extent is based on this sort of chivalric relationship or chivalric expectation.
Yeah.
Because he does feel a bit like Yang's Lancelot when you think about it.
Yeah.
This slightly problematic and annoying, person who is the most quote unquote loyal person in your.
And then the best in combat and everything.
Yeah. So we get the coup happens, and then Yang's fleet sets out to stop the coup. Do we get anything else between this? There is the conversation about Julian, I guess. The discussion about options.
Yeah. And he wants to go on the fleet with Yang, right? And Yang's like, can't really think of a good reason not to let him come this time.
Yeah.
It really seems like Julian's going to die. Those sorts of conversations, maybe.
Like a Yang Wenli's first blunder.
Like, it's such a big signal to me. Like it's as bad as if Julian said, I'm 10 days away from retiring from the...
It'll be a very young retirement. Imagine.
He's 10 days away from his 16th birthday or something.
Yeah.
Something like that. Like, I got a girl waiting for me at home. I can't wait to see her. It's like big red flag for he's gonna die.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we'll stick this one in the Kumail's prediction bank.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to spoil anything, Kumail.
Yeah,
We'll play this back if I'm right, and if I'm wrong, we'll just forget it.
Yep.
Consequence free.
Just like Julian going with the rest of the fleet.
One thing I thought about was True Knight has gone into hiding.
Yep.
And another big prediction of Kumail's big predictions, this coup will fail because Yang Wenli's, as the wiki put it, his fight for democracy will succeed. Which, sorry, that's if anytime when you read the news and a spokesperson for the White House or some other institution, but let's say the White House says they're fighting for democracy.
Yeah.
Nothing ever reads as more false than that to me. So the fact that the wiki put that unironically is just very funny.
Yeah, I get like flashbacks to 2004, when I was a wee lad, and you read on you watch TV and this is about installing democracy in a specific country that I won't name. I won't name. And we all know how that turned out. It
was over before Christmas.
Yeah, exactly. And now they have a functioning democracy.
Got hurt, and they have a functioning democracy.
So hopefully this goes better for Yang Wenli than that. Like, to be honest, if the only bad thing that happens is Julian dies, then by that metric, it's a full success.
Full success.
Joy won't affect
mission accomplished.
Ladies and gentlemen. That's what I was going to say. When yes, that's what True Knight is going to do. He's going to come out of hiding with the banner and shake Yang's hand like while people are taking photos. We got
him.
We're actually combining two separate things there, I think. We mission accomplished and we got him. Yeah,
they both have the same energy though, don't they?
They're not disconnected.
Yeah. I was reading about those caves again, like when Time magazine published that picture of Osama bin Laden's cave, and like it's got like the air conditioning, like the vents, like and like entrances large enough for trucks or tanks and like all this kind of stuff. And it looks like a Dwarf Fortress game. And it's absolutely astonishing that anybody believed this at the time. Like, oh yeah, Osama bin Laden, he's living in a James Bond lair with like air conditioning and they just found him in like a house.
Yeah.
He was just in a house in Pakistan. Like, it wasn't man.
I found a page from an old like 60s or 70s Batman comic, which does a full like sectional view of the Batcave. Looks exactly like those diagrams
of
Bin Laden's cave. Yeah.
So maybe that's what they're going to do in the next episode. They'll be like, Job Trunheit is in hiding, but he's not just in a cave. He's
it's like a sci-fi cave.
The cave is large enough. They've got a bar downstairs. They've got a yoga studio. They've got
like a cinema built in.
Yeah. The funny thing though is that obviously when they
like on loop.
I love that when they found Osama bin Laden's computer, it had like a load of like anime rips and torrents and stuff on it.
Yeah.
And like it had like I can't remember, like it's just like so much weird stuff that you just and a lot of people have pointed out, which isn't very fun, I have to say. It's just not very fun that he probably had the laptop. He probably bought the laptop secondhand, so it probably had a bunch of data on it still. or it was like a stolen laptop that he. But I choose to believe that he was watching like, in a Yusha in his compound.
It was probably just someone else torrenting on that laptop.
Right? Yeah.
Like he wasn't the only one using it. That would surprise me.
Yep. Has anyone ever fought for democracy? This is a question that could land us in hot water, but has this ever actually happened? Because usually when you say someone fought for democracy, in quotes, you mean that there was a less liberal or less democratic institution that was like challenging your one, right? Like in World War II, people were fighting for democracy. Were they? Or were they just fighting against autocracy, Or like in the English Civil War, you're like, oh, it was a fight against monarchy. It was a fight for democracy. It wasn't really, though, because like the guys in the House of Commons were just all like nobles. So
when we say democracy, do we mean like, can we define the thing we're fighting for here?
You want to define democracy? That seems...
Yes, because it's not just equal rights for people, is it? Or
yeah,
if that's just it, then surely like the Haitian Revolution would count, where they killed all the slavers.
Yeah.
That sounds like a good one.
But Haiti is not really a democracy. I don't know if that was the primary reason. Like it was emancipation, right? Like it was like a achievable material goal. It wasn't fighting to establish some institution. I don't know. It'd be interesting to...
So a fight to remove an autocratic government and then to install free elections? Is that?
Yeah. Maybe the American Revolution is the probably going to get. Yeah.
Indian independence.
The French Revolution.
Any African nation that holds elections now that was then a colony of the French or the British. Any colony.
But then you probably have a mix of what people would want who come together in these forces to partly it's overthrowing, like you say, the old regime, whatever it is. I'm sure people who make up that overthrowing force have different ideas about what to replace it with.
1 second. Alert. Participant Joel is having a problem.
God, he's always having a problem. I knew the White House was listening in and they just wanted to stop Joel in his tracks here.
I guess we can just go straight into closing remarks or discussion on the episode.
I hear he can turn himself into an elephant now.
It's for all ages, okay? It's all ages.
Good. I very much like that the previous recording ends with us talking about Osama bin Laden, and you starting the new recording saying he turns into an elephant now.
Listen, there's nothing that guy can't do. I mean, he lives in like a dwarf fortress bunker. He's got high quality torrents of classic 90s anime.
Well, let me just ask you this question. How does this episode end? Episode 19?
Sorry. Okay, I gotta pull myself. Sorry, there's just like 1,000 intrusive thoughts going through my head of like what I could say that I would have to edit out again. Like, remember last episode where I said you gotta hand it to the Taliban? I've been thinking to myself, like, you gotta make sure you edit that bit out because that's.
Did you say that? Well, now you gotta edit out this one as well.
Yeah.
Well, now I gotta edit this bit out too, but also, well, this is a little bit. I don't think anyone's gonna think I'm pro Taliban. With the in context, like, and then I suppose they could just make a clip. That's the thing.
To be honest, I'm not quite too sure how you feel about them right now.
Neither am I. I'm pretty confused,
But Yang Wen Lee decides to fight for democracy. That's just how this episode ends. And he decides to go do it on 20th of April, which pretty chill.
Pretty chill. So the Yang fleet heads out of Islam Fortress. Goes out. Sorry, my mistake.
Name of the episode declares the Yang fleet goes out.
Goes out.
Bad episode name.
Bad episode.
It is a bad episode. It is a bad episode name.
Mm.
But it does make me think that like they're going out. You know, they're going out to paint the town red. The Yang fleet.
I thought that would have been funny if you said it makes me think of going out, and you just mic dropped and just walked out, and that was the end of the episode. Very good.
Yeah.
The narrator signs off this episode. Does he sign off every episode? Probably does, right?
It's been quite inconsistent over this last season, I think. I don't think he's opened every episode, and I don't think he's closed every episode. Maybe he's closed every episode.
Doesn't he close this one by saying, like, and Yang goes out to fight for democracy, and thus was the end of everything, or like the beginning of the end, or he says something ominous, doesn't he, at the end?
Yeah, he always says something ominous. He's always like, little did everyone know that blood would flow from every star in the galaxy. And you're like, oh my God, that sounds horrible.
I'm just a historian.
Yeah. I'm just trying to spice it up.
It takes a little bit of artistic license for the way that I write my...
Yeah. I mean, if I don't spice things up, you guys aren't going to come to a 9 a.m. lecture. So, you know, that's why I got to leave you on a little bit of a cliffhanger.
He says Yang will go back to set out from Isilon to, I guess,
to Heineken, right?
Yeah. Ironically, back to the place that he just come from.
Oh, yeah. They say it's the first mobilization of the Yang fleet. And ironically, it's against their own citizens.
Yeah.
Bad times ahead for the Republic.
Yeah, well, for both sides, really. You know, the only people who are going to be winning in this whole thing are probably Fazan, you know?
Oh, we did
they did have a scene, didn't they?
Yeah.
Had a scene, yeah. The Fazan scenes are always the same. Like, you know, he's like sitting there scheming when Dominique prances around in a silk dress, and she's like, but what kind of scheme are you planning to build? And then he says, my dear, I'm planning so many schemes you couldn't possibly imagine.
Now, excuse me, I need to go into the Bat Cave to talk to Darth Vader.
To talk to Darth Vader.
I'm just trying to get on your level.
Yeah, trying to speak your language, Kumail.
Yeah,
I appreciate it.
You just get laughed down. You try so hard to be relevant, Joel. This is what you get.
Yeah, it's true.
You do make Adrian Rubinsky. That's his name, right?
Yeah.
Oh, great! I'm so glad I remembered that. You do make him sound like I've got so many schemes I can hardly.
Yeah.
You make him sound like a Peter Sellers character from like the Pink Panther or something.
Yeah. Well, that's a very flattering comparison. I was more going for a kind of very poor Donald Trump, you know. I've so many schemes.
So many schemes.
That's not bad. That's not bad.
Yeah. Trump's really hard to do. Like I think even the best impressionists on the planet struggle to do Donald Trump. He's got such a unique delivery. I don't understand where it comes from or how his
Have we talked about this? That I've thought that like if he wasn't so awful, he would be hilariously funny.
He is hysterically funny. He is so funny, and like obviously he's in these positions of power, and he's just like an awful guy. But man, you really got to hand it to him. That guy he's like the comedic timing is astonishing.
Yeah.
And and like people say that he's like stupid or whatever, and you know he's not exactly the most well-read guy. You know, obviously he's not like an erudite man. But I don't think you get to the position that you're in like he is without, you know, having some sort of cunning or, you know, like a decent intellect. So you do wonder like how many of these malaprops and mistakes that he makes are completely intentional. Like George W. Bush, you know, like whatever his what's the famous one? Oh yeah, fool me once. but fool me twice, shame on. Anyway, like that one. It's just completely. That was completely fabricated. Like he didn't forget the phrase. What a bastard.
So just before we wrap up, I just want to summary of Joel's positions today. Ban of Taliban, Osama bin Laden, pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Gotta hand it to Trump and Bush.
That's
really all sides covered.
Yeah. The thing is, like, you gotta cover as many extreme positions as possible, and sort of find yourself somewhere in the middle, you know. That's
the only way to be a true centrist.
Yeah, exactly, is to side with the Taliban and George Bush at the same time.
Yeah.
That is basically what our last centrist government did, so...
yeah. This is actually policy in the UK, so yeah.
I'm curious to see how much of this you'll decide to keep in.
Me too, actually. I mean, maybe, yeah.
I'm happy for it all to go out, but I'm not the one who said anything, so...
All I said was that Trump was funny and that Osama bin Laden had fun stuff on his hard drive.
I'm going to edit this one. I think I'm going to edit this one.
Thanks for listening to this episode of In the Skies of Love. We hope you enjoyed our discussion of Legend of the Galactic Heroes. If you have any comments or questions, please reach out to us at intheskiesoflove@gmail.com, or you can find Kumail at HiKumail on Twitter. We have a Patreon of In the Skies of Love, and also Kumail has a bunch of books maybe for sale after he goes to his conference. So, thanks very much for tuning in. Tune in next time for our review of episodes 20 and 21. Until then, we'll see you in the skies of love.
I'm disappointed you didn't read out the word Patreon as it's spelt here in this outro as
Patreon. Yeah, Patreon. It's like
that's well avoided.
It sounds like a pastry or something. Right? You get a pret-a-manger. Yeah, can I grab a large filter and a Patterone, please?
Patterone.
Patterone.